I told you we are done. I told you never to come here, you poor thing.
The first splash landed before he understood what was happening. Cold. Thick. It slid across his scalp like a living thing, crawling, heavy, sticky. For half a second, he thought it was rain, an unexpected drizzle from a broken pipe above the courthouse steps. Then the smell hit him. Sour. Rotten. Old water that had sat too long in a forgotten gutter, mixed with something darker, something humiliatingly human. It ran down his forehead, into his eyebrows, over his closed eyelids, and he flinched, gasping as it found his mouth. Laughter followed. Not the kind that bursts out by accident. This was sharp laughter, deliberate, rehearsed, the laughter of people who had waited for this moment and would savor it. He dropped to one knee without meaning to, hands flying up too late. The dirty water soaked into his hair, down the collar of his shirt, turning the thin fabric heavy against his skin. It dripped off his nose and chin, splattering onto the stone beneath him. Around him, phones were already raised, lenses pointed, red recording lights blinking like tiny, merciless eyes. "What is this?" he muttered, voice cracking. "Please, please." Another splash followed, smaller this time, the last of it emptied with a cruel tilt of a cup. A woman's hand rested on his shoulder. He knew that hand. The fingers were familiar. He had held them through long nights when the power went out. He had kissed those knuckles when she cried quietly so the neighbors wouldn't hear. He had wrapped that same hand in both of his when he promised her, again and again, that things would get better. Now, that hand pressed down, not to comfort, but to display him. "Stand still," she said calmly. He looked up. Her face was composed, cold, beautiful in a way that hurt him more than the water ever could. She wore black, tailored and sharp, the kind of outfit she used to point at through shop windows and laugh bitterly about. Her hair was neat. Her eyes avoided his, not because she was ashamed, but because she no longer felt the need to look. Behind her, at the top of the steps, a man in an expensive suit stood with his arms folded, smiling. He looked like a painting, clean, rich, untouchable. He watched as if this were entertainment arranged just for him. Someone shouted from the crowd. "Is that your poor husband?" The words landed harder than the water. More laughter. The woman finally removed her hand from his shoulder. She stepped back, heels clicking against stone, creating distance as if he were something contagious. "Yes," she said clearly, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "That's him." The man bowed his head, not in shame at first, but in confusion. His mind refused to catch up to his body. This could not be real. This had to be some mistake, some cruel misunderstanding that would be corrected if he just waited long enough. But no one corrected it. The cameras kept rolling, and the woman he loved turned away. Before we continue, welcome, story lovers. If you enjoy deeply emotional, dramatic stories filled with betrayal, redemption, and unforgettable twists, take a moment to like this story and subscribe. Your support helps us keep bringing powerful narratives like this one. Now, let's return to the story. His name was Daniel Adebayo, though no one bothered to ask that day. To them, he was just the man on the ground, soaked and humiliated, a symbol of failure laid bare in public. But Daniel had not always been this. He had once been a man full of quiet hope, the kind that doesn't shout but endures. He believed in slow progress, in patience, in building something brick by brick, even when your hands bled. He met her, Amara, when neither of them had anything. They were young then. Poor, yes, but rich in plans. They rented a single room that smelled of damp walls and fried onions from the neighbor's kitchen. They shared one mattress, one fan, one dream. Daniel worked 2 jobs, one during the day at a small logistics firm, another at night repairing old computers. Amara sold clothes online, modeling them herself in their cramped room, posing near the window where the light was best. At night, when exhaustion wrapped around them like a heavy blanket, Daniel would whisper, "One day, you'll never have to worry again." Amara would smile, but it never reached her eyes. She wanted speed. She wanted now. Years passed. Daniel rose slowly. Too slowly for her. Promotions came, but not fast enough. Raises came, but not big enough. Every delay felt like an insult to her ambitions. "Other men our age are driving cars," she would say, scrolling through her phone. "They're buying houses. They're traveling." Daniel would nod. "We'll get there." "When?" she asked. "When we're old." Patience was a language Daniel spoke fluently. Amara never learned it. Then came Victor Kane. He entered her life like a storm disguised as sunshine. Wealthy, confident, generous with his attention. He met her at a charity event she attended alone, tired of explaining Daniel's absence. Victor listened when she talked. He admired her. He spoke of opportunities, investments, a world that moved fast and rewarded those bold enough to take it. He never asked about Daniel. Amara didn't volunteer the details. Within months, her life transformed. New clothes, new circles, new confidence, and a growing resentment toward the man who reminded her of the life she was trying to escape. The day she left Daniel, she did not cry. "I can't do this anymore," she said, standing in the doorway with a suitcase he had never seen before. "I deserve more." Daniel looked at her, stunned. "We deserve more," he corrected gently. "Together." She laughed. "That's the problem. You still think like that." And just like that, she was gone. Daniel spiraled. Not because he hated her, but because he loved her. He blamed himself, worked harder, slept less, ate poorly. He refused to become bitter, even when rumors reached him, about Victor, about luxury, about how easily she had replaced him. What Daniel did not know was that Victor Kane was not who he seemed. Victor was rich, yes, but his wealth was borrowed. His empire was a house built on loans, shady partnerships, and one silent investor whose name never appeared on paper. That investor was Daniel. Years earlier, Daniel had quietly co-founded a tech logistics platform under a shell company, choosing anonymity while he focused on building the foundation. He had signed away public recognition to avoid distractions, trusting contracts and lawyers to protect his interests. Victor Kane was merely the face, and Amara had chosen the face over the foundation. The day of the humiliation was no accident. Victor had wanted to impress investors, to show dominance, to prove that he had risen above everyone, including the nobody Amara once married. When he learned Daniel would be present near the courthouse, struggling with a minor legal dispute Victor himself had engineered, he saw an opportunity. Amara agreed without hesitation. She did not know whose power she was standing on. Daniel said nothing that day. He stood, dripping and silent, and walked away while the crowd slowly dispersed, satisfied. But silence is not weakness. In the weeks that followed, Daniel moved with precision. Contracts were reviewed, accounts frozen, partnerships dissolved. Victor's empire began to crack, not all at once, but in frightening stages. Investors pulled out. Deals collapsed. Authorities asked questions Victor could not answer. Amara watched her new world crumble in confusion and fear. Victor grew cruel, desperate, blaming everyone but himself. Then came the letter. A formal notice informing Victor Kane that majority ownership had been reclaimed by the original investor. The signature at the bottom made Amara's hands tremble. Daniel Adebayo. Reality hit her like that first splash of dirty water. She went to him, begged, apologized, cried the tears she had saved for years. Daniel listened, calm, controlled. "I didn't ruin your life," he said quietly. "I just stopped protecting it." When Victor was arrested, the cameras returned. But this time, Daniel stood tall, clean, composed. He did not smile. He did not gloat. Amara stood alone in the crowd, invisible. Daniel rebuilt, not for revenge, but for peace. He invested in people like his younger self. He told his story not with bitterness, but with honesty. And the moral became clear to all who listened. Never mistake patience for weakness. Never mock a man's journey when you don't know his destination. And never pour humiliation on someone whose silence is funding your pride. Because some foundations are invisible until the day they rise and leave you standing in the ruins of your own impatience.